Good evening. Welcome to tonight's election forum with candidates for Columbia City Council. My name is Lauren Williams, Adult and Community Services Manager for the Columbia Public Library, a part of the Daniel Boone Regional Library System, and we are glad to be co-hosting this forum tonight. A bit of Zoom housekeeping before we begin. If you have any questions for our candidates, we ask that you use Zoom's chat feature. So if you hover over the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should see a chat bubble there. So just click on that and type your question there. If you're on a phone or a tablet, you might have to tap in the middle of your screen to get that chat feature to come up. Barbara Hoppe, who is a League of Women Voters board member, will serve as the moderator for tonight's forum. So thank you so much, Barbara, and I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. The League of Women Voters welcomes you to tonight's Zoom candidate forum. I am Barbara Hoppe, and I'm your moderator for tonight and a League of Women Voter board member. Tonight we have the candidates for Columbia City Council in wards 2 and 6 for the April 6th election. Welcome to our candidates and to all our viewers. Columbia has 7 members of the City Council. 6 are representatives of the wards and are elected every 3 years alternatingly. And the 7th is the mayor, who is elected every 6 years, or every 3 years. Each year, 2 ward seats are up for election, and every 3rd year, the mayor is up for election. So this year, wards 2 and 6 are up for election. The candidates for Ward 2 are Bill Whitcamper, Jim Meyer, and Andrea Weiner. The candidates for Ward 6 are Betsy Peters, Randy Minshew, and Philip Merriman. For the first 30 minutes, we will focus on candidates from the 6th ward. We will allow 2 minutes for opening statement from each candidate. Then the League of Women Voters will have moderator questions, followed by chat questions for as much time as we have available. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And following the questions, we will have closing arguments from each candidate for 1 minute. We have timer cards to help people know when time is getting down to 15 seconds and then when time is up. And I will be using those. And before we begin the program, I wanted to mention that the League did ask the candidates in writing 3 questions, and they answered those questions in writing. And we have a League of Women Voters guide with those questions. They are basically focusing on COVID-19 and the city's actions and responses, and also on climate change. And we won't be asking those questions in this forum, but we encourage you to look at the voters guide because those answers are very important and I think significantly different from each other. And so if you can go to the League website, lwcbc.org, you can look at our digital voters guide. With that, I'd like to start our forum, and we will turn to opening statements from the 2nd ward, or from the 6th ward. And we will start with Betsy Peters. Betsy, you may make your opening statement.
Thank you for inviting me to this forum. It's always interesting to come to the League of Women Voters Forum and see what is on people's minds. I am the current 6th Ward City Council person. I have been representing the 6th Ward for the last 6 years, and hopefully will continue to do that for another 3 years. I was raised in Columbia. I went to the University of Missouri School of Medicine to get my doctorate. I worked in Dallas for 20 years, so I have experience in much larger cities. And then I moved back here in 2010. I'm interested in just continuing the work of the City Council. I think that we need to address the use tax, which sounds like it's finally making its way through the state. which means it will then have to come to the cities and see if the citizens are willing to pay the same tax online that they pay for things if you buy it in town. So we need to do that. And that would provide a lot of revenue to increase our funding for our police and fire, along with some of the infrastructure needs that the city has. And so I'm hoping to continue to work on that, along with continuing to improve the infrastructure of the city. And since we have that climate action plan, we need to start looking at how the city operates in relationship to that plan. We just need to use that as a lens to look at what the city is doing and what options we have to improve. And I think we need to work on education to allow all of us to do the best we can to protect our climate. At the same time, I think we're still going to continue to use cars and heat. So I'm asking that you consider voting for me for the 6th Ward, and thank you again for inviting me here.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And now we will go to Randy Minshew for his opening statement.
My name is Randy Minshew, and I'm running for the 6th Ward City Council seat in Columbia, Missouri. And I'm asking for your vote on Tuesday, April 6th. I've been a business owner in Columbia for more than 25 years now and currently serve as the Chief Operating Officer for DeLine Holdings. DeLine is a family of companies doing business in finance, residential housing, commercial real estate, and development, equestrian rescue, online and retail sales. And the DeLine Foundation works with a number of nonprofit organizations. My wife of 40 years, Cindy, and I raised our kids in Columbia, and now we're fortunate enough to see some of our kids raise their own families here as well. I love our community and believe serving on our city council is a way to affect positive, meaningful change. I will advocate for a safer and stronger Columbia. I will focus on ways to make Columbia safer for everyone by supporting more training and resources for our law enforcement and first responders. And I will listen to everyone with concerns on how best to enforce law and order in a fair and equitable way. Columbia is a great place to live. By working together, our community has prospered, and we've enjoyed many accomplishments. Today, our community, along with many others across our state and country, are facing challenges we never imagined possible. Columbians looked for leadership from City Council to lay the groundwork for the COVID response, and although we have fared better than some cities, now more than ever, we need strong leadership to tackle the COVID recovery and revive our economy. I sincerely believe Columbia can be stronger than ever before, but it will take the right kind of leadership to ensure the right outcome. I believe my 40 years in business, dealing with thousands of customers and employees across multiple states, and many years of working with the disenfranchised community makes me the right leader to represent my 6th Ward neighbors in the fight for equity in our community. Please visit my website at minshew6thward.com, and I look forward to answering y'all's questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minshew. And now we will go to Philip Merriman. You may make your opening statement.
Thank you, Barbara. Also, thank you to the Daniel Boone Regional Library and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I enjoy the opportunity to speak to my community members and discuss these hot button topics with the other panelists. My name is Philip Merriman, and I'm running for the 6th Ward City Council seat. I feel I bring a unique perspective to this, having a background in technology and no background at all in politics. I think it has time for that particular shift. I think the way our city council has operated is in need of some change. I think that there's a reason that we have lost the trust and the support of our community. And I hope to restore that trust through implementing changes that add transparency and accountability to local city governance. This is the chief effort of my campaign. I think that restoring public trust in local governance is absolutely essential, and I think that I'm the right candidate to make that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. We will now go to the questions, first 3 from the league, and then we'll go to chat questions for as much time as we have. And we will rotate who goes first on the questions. So the first question goes to Betsy Peters. And the question is, what are the major differences between you and the other two candidates running for the 6th Ward? And how will your election or re-election impact Columbia for the next 3 years?
Well, thank you. That is quite a broad question. I think that I don't feel that we have lost the trust of the citizens. I feel like part of my job as a city council person is to answer their questions, find out whatever information they need, help with whatever, whether it's trash or natural gas trash truck. Someone asked me about that the other day. So I feel that, I'm probably more of the progressive candidate. I am interested in climate change. I do think that we need to do a good job with that. We do need to support our police and fire. And my feeling for that is that we need to level the playing field with the use tax. So I would say those are my differences. Although I'm a landlord, I cannot say that I have 45 years of or 25 years of business experience. But I do feel like I know the city well, and I feel like I can advocate when I need to. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And now Randy Minshew has an opportunity to answer that question.
So I think the difference with what I bring to the table would probably be my experience in business and problem solving. I sort of understand the science of problem solving, having raised 4 children. We raised 3 of our nieces and or 2 nieces and a nephew. So really 7 kids went through Rockbridge. So through problem solving with children and also with all of the business ventures that I've been involved in with all of the employees that I've had, I think that understanding what it takes to solve problems and how to dissect and just understanding the science of problem solving, I think is a major difference. I think everyone, all 3 candidates bring a different list of experiences to the council. I simply think mine works better for what's required of a city council person. I just see that my experience would be valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minshew. And now we go to Philip Merriman for his response.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah, I think that, the primary way in which I differ from the other 2 candidates is, I'm a bit younger. I think that lends itself to a certain kind of perspective. I'm sorry, that's not politically correct, I guess, to say. There's definitely a perspective that comes with that. I think that the perspective that my youth does sort of grant in any meaningful way is having my ear closer to that demographic, closer to the age bracket that's going to be coming in behind us. I think that I'm definitely a less progressive candidate, to follow on Betsy's definition there. I'm a hard data-driven person. I have my background in technology, and my education is all in technology. That's a field that I've spent my entire life in, and it lends itself to thinking outside the box, thinking critically, coming up with unique solutions to problems rather than relying on methods that have not historically yielded fruit. And I think I've demonstrated and exhibited high capacity for that in my profession and in my social life. I think that anybody who knows me would attend to that. So I think that the benefit of having me as a candidate would really just be a perspective that hasn't been demonstrated.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. Now we'll go to the second question, and we'll start with Randy Minshew, and then Mr. Merriman, and then Betsy Peters. What are 1 or 2 significant issues of concern in your ward or in the city, and how would you address them?
One big issue in the 6th Ward right now, we're short a fire station. If you look at all of the rooftops that are in the vineyards, the Brooks, and the Old Hawthorne neighborhood, That's a lot of houses with no fire protection, no fire station out there. That is a major issue. I understand there's some significant issues trying to find property that would work, but that's got to be solved. And so that's one that I think, because of my background in my business development, I think I could help solve that and have a few ideas on how to get that done. And have actually worked with the fire department and one of the landowners out there, even before being elected, trying to get that solved. And I'm sorry, but the second part of your question I didn't catch, and so I'm out of time.
I think you answered it. Thank you. And now we'll go to Philip Merriman for your answer.
I agree with Randy that there is a shortage of one fire department in Ward 6, but I think that there are other unique issues with Ward 6. We share a significant portion of our ward with campus. That brings along a little bit of baggage that other wards aren't going to have. It's not all bad. I mean, sharing with campus isn't it's not the worst thing in the world. It just brings along a lot of student issues that aren't present in other wards. We have a lot of student housing in Ward 6. We have a lot of crime in Ward 6. We have a lot of drugs in Ward 6. Ward 6 is one of the lower income wards in Columbia, and those are all issues that hold hands together. Those are all issues that correlate. There's a lot of demographic data that isn't politically correct to talk about. There's a lot of information where we have the student population engaging in higher crime and drug use than other populations, and that turns away buyers for homes and properties and things like that. There's other issues that need to be discussed that may or not have already been brought up to the city council, but are definitely worth discussing.
I guess it's going to be my turn, so I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay, hi, Barbara. I love Zoom. It's always so interesting to try and get this to work. Mr. Mitch is right. We do not have a fire station in Ward 6 that we need to, and we do continue to work on that because of not being able to find any property. We do have it funded, however. So once we find the property, we do have it funded and we can build that. So I would love to hear what he knows or what he can bring to the table as far as getting a piece of property that the landlord is willing to sell. Otherwise, I think we need to work on infrastructure, whether it's sewer or roads or water, whatever, stormwater, especially we need to work on that. Having part of the campus in the 6th ward is fine. I don't find that to be a huge problem myself. There is a lot of student housing, but we have to put our students somewhere, and they seem to be doing okay down there. So, or in the East Campus, wherever. So, I think those are things we need to work on. Thanks.
Thank you, Betsy Peters. And now we'll go to the third question from the league. And we'll start this one with Philip Merriman. And the question is a little more specific. There is a very high density housing development proposed just north of the Gans Creek Wildlife Area, south of Gans Road by Bearfield Road. This section of the park was set aside to provide a wild experience for park users as well as a refuge for wildlife. And park staff refrain from using anything but hand tools in the area. What, if any, controls and restrictions are you in favor of to protect this and other valued and sensitive natural areas in and around Columbia? And that's Mr. Merriman. You can go first on that one.
Thank you. It's a sensitive topic. I actually live somewhat near that area. There's a lot of development going on there right now as well. It's a small business community, and I know that it's not centrally located, and so a lot of those small business members would like to have more housing and development around them to sort of centralize where their business is. I don't blame them for that necessarily. I don't know that that's a justification for moving over wildlife reservation areas and areas that have been already boxed in for other uses. It's already pretty close to the edge of town. It's not like I think there isn't development options available elsewhere. I think that we could probably do a quick look for other areas to develop outside of stuff that's already been set aside. And I would encourage them to look at that instead. I'm not willing to bring the hammer down and use the long arm of government to force anybody to do anything. So if the developers ultimately are able to execute that control and develop, I think that's within their rights to do so, whether we morally advocate for that or not.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. And now we'll go to Betsy Peters for her response.
Well, Barbara, this is, I have not heard of this development until Sunday, and I have not had a chance to actually look into it. So I'm not sure who is involved in the development or what they're actually talking about. So that makes it a little hard to be very specific. Certainly, I think we need to go between, too much development and Gans Creek at the same time. People want to live around there. So I guess I'd have to look at the development, see what they're doing, sort of work at whether we can negotiate something, the same as we've done for Rock Quarry. Is it Rock Quarry? Well, Rock Quarry Road, but Rockbridge State Park. There is development around there. So we just need to look at, what the development is, how they can develop with the least amount of impact, or if we need to address that issue. But I don't know any more about the development, so it's hard to be any more specific than that. I think we need to look at how it would affect the Gans Creek area. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And now we'll go to Randy Minshew for your answer.
So, the problem with telling a developer to go to another area to develop a property that he owns the property that he owns. And so he's going to develop the property that he owns, or he's going to attempt to. So I think the way the city could work with a developer on something like this is you've just got to get together and everybody's got to say, this is what we need. So for the park, for the wildlife, for the people who want to enjoy that. Because when we lived in Bearfield Meadows, we used to go to that park all the time. Our kids love that park. So I think it's just a matter of getting with the developers and saying, this is what we need to see to protect this area. Because those are amenities for Columbia, our trails, all of the things that make Columbia special. We can't have a developer eliminate those things, but we also can't tell a developer, you can't develop or go find a different piece of property because it's not the property he owns. So I think it's just a matter of working together and solving it, just like Betsy said. We've done that in the past, and I think we'd do it again here.
Thank you, Mr. Minshew. And now we'll try to take a couple audience viewer questions. And we'll go first with Betsy Peters on this one. And it says, the question is, each candidate raised money for their ward race. How much of the funds were raised, and how much of these funds have been received from the 6th Ward residents?
Okay. Well, I think, we've all raised money, hopefully. People that support us and think that we would be the best person to represent them. I would say most of my money has come from either friends or people that live in the 6th Ward, people that feel that I can get them answers or can represent them well. I can't give you a percentage because I really haven't counted it up, but I think in a local election, the people that are most interested in what happens locally are the ones that we would be representing. So I would say 80 to 90% of what I've raised has been from 6th Ward residents.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And now we'll go to Randy Minshew for that question.
So we set a big goal on money raised because we wanted to share the news that I was running for city council. And so we have not been shy about that. And my fear every night is that I'll go to sleep and there'll be some square inch of property in 6th Ward that doesn't have one of my signs on it. So as far as the money raised, and I know we've raised more than any other candidate, and I know we've raised more from the 6th Ward residents than any other candidate, because I have tracked that. But I've also gotten money from friends in Houston. I got money from a friend in New Mexico who just wants to see me succeed. So We've gotten a couple of large checks from two business owners here in town. One of them's my boss, and he said, "I want to see you succeed." So I'm very proud of what we've done. I think it shows support, and I think it shows like an initiative that people are looking for a change in the 6th Ward. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Minshew. And now we're running out of time. Oh, wait, we'll go to Philip Merriman, and then we'll go to closing arguments or statements, not arguments. So, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you to Alice Turner. I'm getting that right from the questionnaire. This is a really insightful question, and it says a lot. It's difficult to really track the individual. So I want to give both of the other candidates credit for their answers. It's actually difficult to track the individual donations. You are required by law to collect certain information from every donor. And so some of that is really easy to log and file, and some of it's not. My campaign is entirely self-funded. I collect no money from anybody. My wife and I have donated a little bit in the beginning during our setup process, since this was the first time I've run for city council and the process was new to me. But really it was just for some basic expenses. I think there's a reason people ask this question, and if I can be that presumptuous, I think it's because knowing where money comes from is telling. It's not a sign of the candidate themselves being shady or suspicious, but knowing who supports them does grant a lot of insight into the kind of candidate they're going to be. If your money comes from other people who are already ideologically or politically aligned with you, then it tells them a lot. All the promises you can make about what you're going to do differently, or your behavior, the money doesn't lie. And I think that I wanted to fund my own race specifically to avoid any of that particular drama.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. We will now go to closing statements, and there'll be 1 minute for closing statements, and we'll go in reverse order from the opening statement. So, Mr. Merriman, you may have your closing statement.
Thank you. I'll try and make this short and sweet. I'm not going to beat my chest about my qualifications or why I'm the best person in the world for everything. Instead, I'm just going to say that I'd be honored to serve the community. I think that I have a great understanding of what the nature of public service is, what it means to work for the public. I understand that I'm, if I should win, I would be elected to represent every member of the community, not just the ones who voted for or against me. And I think that part of my bid in the beginning for transparency really lends itself to managing that in an intelligible way. I hope to represent everybody in the ward in issues that I both agree with and disagree with. I think that's an important part of public service, and I'd be honored to have that chance.
Thank you, Mr. Merriman. And now, Mr. Minshew, you may have your closing statement.
Well, I think I'd love to see everyone, do further investigation into the candidates, or not investigation, but look at their qualifications. Look us up on Facebook, look us up on LinkedIn, look at the things that we've done. I'm not sure how anyone will know what any of us has done if we don't tell you. So I won't call it beating my chest, but you kind of got to talk about yourself if you're going to run for election. So one thing I would like to say, and I think this is a diverse, my background is diverse, but my interest and sort of my ideologies, my work in the recovery field and my work with the homeless, my work with the disenfranchised, I think makes me kind of a unique candidate. Those are things that I care about, and I think it's something the city is working on, and I think I have some ideas on how we can work on that as well, along with infrastructure, fire, and police department. So I look forward to speaking with anyone that's got questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minshew. And now, Ms. Peters, you may make your closing statement.
Well, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having this forum and allowing us a chance to highlight what we do. I feel like I've represented the 6th Ward pretty well for the last 6 years. It is a diverse ward, but I feel like I've done a pretty good job of representing just the folks that live in the 6th Ward and representing their interests. I am interested in making this the best city that it can be for everybody involved. And I feel that I've done that, and I'm going to hopefully continue to do that for another 3 years, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. And thank you to all the 6th Ward candidates. And now we will go to the 2nd Ward candidates. We had to make a little switch earlier because we were having technical difficulties with the 2nd Ward, but we're coming back to them. Thank you again, 6th Ward candidates. We will now start with opening statements for the 2nd Ward City Council candidates. And we will start with Bill Whitekemper. You may now make your opening statement of up to 2 minutes.
Am I live? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, thank you. It seems the city of Columbia may be afflicted with many of the same problems that it was the last time I ran for a council seat 8 years ago. The problem seems to be management. Is it incompetence or something far worse? Only a thorough state audit may determine which it is. The status quo, if that's the way we've always done it, is not acceptable. Government must be constantly looking for a better way of doing everything. Continuous improvement must be government's motto. Government only becomes complex and complicated when good ordinances, laws, policies, and procedures are not developed, adopted, kept up to date, and consistently applied. If there is any deviation from an ordinance, law, a policy, or a procedure, it must be addressed. Transparency and honesty must be the rule. Anything less is unacceptable. We must be able to trust and have faith in our government to do the right thing every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitekemper. And now, Jim Meyer, you may make your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the Women Voters, League of Women Voters, and to the library for sponsoring this forum. I'm Jim Meyer, and I'm running for City Council in the 2nd Ward. My fundamental reason for running is to bring balance to the City Council, philosophically and in terms of background and experience. I'm a small business owner who understands the trials and tribulations of running a very small business with 2 or 3 employees in Columbia. As a retired Army officer, I've also had leadership experience in large organizations where I've been the commander in an organization of more than 900 soldiers and a senior executive in an organization of nearly 10,000 members. I believe that the fundamental reason for the existence of government at any level is to protect the rights of its citizens. This principle applies whether we're talking about the federal government and its military or other instruments of national power to protect us from foreign threats, or a local government and its law enforcement agency to protect us from crime. Whatever else we ask a government to do, it must protect the rights of the people in carrying out its tasks because that's its fundamental purpose. I believe that our city government has grown very powerful, and it is sometimes indifferent to the liberties of individuals when exercising its power. Because of my background in real estate, I'm particularly sensitive to the ways that the city infringes on property rights, but that's not the only area of concern. I'd like to be clear that I'm not speaking about the Columbia Police Department. I think they do a great job. There are other city departments that concern me. If elected, I hope to bring renewed attention to the principles of liberty, limited government, and the rule of law. I believe that the core functions of local government are twofold. First, to provide public safety, and secondly, to provide public infrastructure for common use, such as road and bridges. We ask our city to provide other services beyond these, certainly, but I think more priorities should be given to these core functions. Those are the priorities I will pursue if elected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And now, Andrea Weiner, you may make your opening statement.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the honorable, inimitable Barbara Happy for not only hosting tonight's event, but for empowering voters in our community. My name is Andrea Weiner, and I'm running to be your representative from the 2nd Ward for Columbia City Council. I'm running because our community needs a council person that is focused on protecting our health, preserving good paying jobs, and creating a Columbia where everyone has the opportunity to prosper. We need to move beyond the rhetoric and promises to implementing real policies that benefit each of our lives in tangible ways. Excuse me. I am running because our community needs a council person that's focused on protecting the health of our community. COVID-19 continues to have an impact on our community. It has acted as a magnifying glass to the inequality that exists in Columbia and has underscored the need for action. I'm a mother to a 5-year-old named Henry. I know what it's like to have to balance the risk of bringing illness into our home while still going to work. Families throughout Columbia are fighting to stay in their homes and keep the lights on after losing their jobs or having their income dramatically cut. Parents are balancing full-time jobs and caring for children as schools go in and out of virtual learning. Our healthcare workers are having to care for people from all over the region with limited resources. Now, more than ever, we must lay the foundation for Columbia where everyone has the opportunity not to just get by, but to prosper. That means neighborhoods with well-maintained infrastructure, support for children and families, policy focused on creating quality jobs, and a city government that is transparent, accountable, and accessible. This vision for Columbia is not out of reach. It's something that I truly believe we can work together to achieve. As community leaders, you are in a unique position to help guide our city policy towards the goal of creating a community where we all can prosper. I look forward to working alongside you now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. Now we will go on to the questions. First, some from the league, and then if we have any chat questions, we'll do chat questions, and we'll rotate who gets the questions first. The first question will be to Bill Whitecamper, and the question is, what are 1 or 2 significant issues of concern in your ward or in the city, and how would you address them?
Well, the second ward has very few infrastructure problems that I'm aware of. As far as roads go, Strong Road is frequently underwater. The roadway needs to be elevated similar to what was done at Highway 63 in Jefferson City, north of Jefferson City, several years ago during the big floods of 93 and 95. Sylvia Street, just south of I-70, drives southwest. It's got a very steep hill going down it. It needs to be probably closed permanently. Blackfoot Road needs to be straightened and widened. There have been a number of deaths along this road. Sewage, there's a manhole located behind 1616 Secretariat Drive. It's downstream of the organic dairy. It overflows frequently when it rains. The sewage backs up into a few houses on Lakeview Avenue and Tupelo Place. These need to be straightened out.
Thank you, Mr. Whitecamper. And now we will go to Jim Meyer for that question.
Thank you. I would say when talking to voters, the issue I hear the most about is trash. Initially, when I was talking with voters, knocking on doors, you had proponents of roll carts, you had opponents of roll carts who wanted to remain with bag service. Now, as I've been speaking with people during the month of February and March, everybody is united in opposition to the current system. So that's the thing that has the most traction right now in terms of top of mind issues with voters in the ward. I would say another issue that's of concern to a lot of people and is mentioned quite often is the adequate policing. People feel that the police department doesn't have enough officers, that they don't have adequate resources, and they want to make sure that their neighborhood is adequately protected and that crime is opposed. And then I think we have an issue with streets. I'm not going to go into chapter and verse because I'm out of time, but we have a lot of deferred maintenance on our streets.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And now we go to Andrea Weiner for her response.
Thank you. The majority of the residents in the second ward are located in a food desert. And depending on which data set you're looking at, there are less than 3 grocery stores in the entire second ward. The majority of residents in our ward are also in a childcare desert where demand far outpaces the capacity. And we have a tremendous amount of families in our ward, more so than just about any other ward in the city. I'd like to pursue further development of crucial areas in the second ward to connect our residents with well-maintained infrastructure, the support for children and families, policy that's focused on creating quality jobs, as well as addressing the systemic inequities that has held our community back for generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Weiner. And now we'll go to a second question, and we'll start with Jim Meyer. And that question is a little bit offshoot of this, but a little more specifically. Do you think Columbia needs more affordable housing options? And if so, what solutions would you support?
Yes, I think
And that-
that housing affordability is a problem in Columbia. If you look at the median home price in Columbia compared to the median income, we're one of the highest multiples in the state, a little bit over 4 times the median income is the median home price. And that was the number from about 3 or 4 years ago. That's very high. Most places in Missouri around 3 or even under 3. So we do have a definite problem with affordability. And that also is true of rental property as well. The issue in large part has to do with overregulation of development. When you impose unnecessary costs on development and restrict the land that can be developed, that creates an artificial scarcity, which drives up prices. So I want to relook the Unified Development Code and look at the items in that code that restrict development unnecessarily to try to get costs down.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And now we will go to Andrea Weiner for her response.
Sure. So the large percentage of Columbia residents are housing cost burdened, meaning that they're paying more than 30% of their household income toward things like rent or mortgage plus utilities. Affordable housing in Columbia is a true and very present need, and one that should be addressed by implementing the variety of recommendations that were made by the Affordable Housing Policy Committee, which includes at a bare minimum examining our existing codes and policies. And I want to note that if what's stopping affordable development and affordable housing from being developed are the fees not being appropriately stair-stepped, that's something that needs to be brought before council for legitimate review. The job of the council is to be predictable and transparent in this instance, and this is no exception.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. And now we will go to Bill White-Kemper for his response.
Yes, I feel that city needs more affordable housing. I think the main problem is utilities. Utilities are just way out of proportion with housing costs. The electric, water, sewer, and stormwater service is not administered fairly. The city's got 10,000 master electric and water meters that drives the cost up for individually metered customers and down for master metered customers. I think the electric utility made $2.5 million last year, and the water utility made $500,000. That's just more than what they'll be making.
Thank you, Mr. White-Kemper. And now we'll go to another question from the league, and we'll start with Andrea Weiner. And that question is one related to housing in a different way. There is a very high density housing development proposed just north of Gans Creek Wild area, south of Gans Road, with 306 small lots in a small area, in a large area. This section of the park was set aside to provide a wild experience for park users, as well as a refuge for wildlife and nature. And park staff currently refrain from using anything but hand tools in the area. What, if any, controls and restrictions are you in favor of to protect this and other valued and sensitive natural areas in and around Columbia?
Thank you. I believe there has to be a balance. We have to find a proper way to strike that balance between creating affordable housing with equity in mind and creating spaces that people want to live, learn, work, and play. If we can find ways to encourage developers to use buildings that already exist, such as the Macy's building, I know that's not in the same area, but if we find ways to incentivize that development, we'll find a more vibrant community than if we continue to grow out and take over other areas.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. And now Bill Whitecamper, your response.
Well, I don't think that you ought to start making people bend over backwards to protect properties that aren't protected by ordinances. If the property is protected by ordinance, the property owner ought to be able to do what he feels is proper as far as building roads and constructing houses and various amenities like that.
Thank you, Mr. Whitecamper. And now we go to Jim Meyer for your response.
Sure. Well, like the candidates from the 6th Ward, I'm not intimately familiar with the proposal, but if the issue is that there's private property adjacent to the Grand Street nature area, and the private property is what's proposing to be developed, I would say, if it's private property, then the property owner has property rights and he should be free to exercise them. I would also say that the development code is currently already quite restrictive. There are things like stream buffers, climax forest preservation rules. There's environmentally sensitive areas. There's steep slope development rules. So there are already a lot of protections in the code. In fact, I think that's part of the problem with the Unified Development Code, that those are too extreme. But I think that development that occurred down there would already protect the natural environment because of the current policies that the city has.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And seeing that there's no chat questions, new chat questions, I'll go to another question from the league. And this one will go to Bill Whitecamper first. After the 2010 census, the city council was tasked to adjust ward boundaries. At that time, there was an effort by some city council members to redraw the maps in a way that would significantly gerrymander the wards and change the ward composition. The effort to gerrymander was defeated. The city council will again need to adjust ward maps after the 2020 census. And the question is, what will you do to make sure that wards are adjusted in a fair and unbiased manner?
I haven't looked at the wards except for the 2nd Ward. And the 2nd Ward's got that little Boot Hill part that goes down below Interstate 70 on the west side. And I'm not sure why that's the way that is, but you just got to look at it and make the best decision you can.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitecamper. And then we go to Jim Meyer for your response.
Sure. When you're drawing any kind of political boundary like that, you're trying to make the areas roughly equal in population and have some kind of compact geographic shape. I think the 2nd Ward, makes sense in that regard right now. So depending upon where development occurs in the city, where population shifts, some of the wards would tend to increase in geographic area and some of them would shrink. But I don't think, I think the 2nd Ward's always going to be generally the northwest part of town. And I don't see that changing.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And now we go to Andrea Weiner for your response.
I would say much like the state initiative that was passed and then kind of rearticulated, Clean Missouri, I would want to see a nonpartisan demographer that would draw the boundaries of the wards based on the decennial census responses. And so we need to be able to balance those and equally distribute our wards accordingly so that we're not focusing too heavily on one area or another. I think this is something that the city council is tasked to do, but I think I personally would like to see a nonpartisan demographer who is skilled in that area to be able to draw those lines.
Thank you, Ms. Weiner. And with that, we're coming to towards the close of the forum. So we're going to go to closing statements. And with that, we're going to start in reverse order. Just a minute. So that will be Andrea Weiner will do closing statements first. And you will have 1 minute.
Thank you so much. I'm deeply passionate about public service, and I'm committed to fostering a community where we all can thrive. Over my career, I've discovered that I'm approximately good at two things: communications and people. I believe that these are two facets that are paramount to the City Council. You have to be able to support the mission of the city and those it seeks to serve, while also being committed to improving the infrastructure in place through communication and consensus building. I believe that I have the passion, the skills, and the tenacity necessary to represent the Second Ward. I look forward to working alongside all of you to create a community that we can all be proud of. And I hope that I've earned your vote on April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea Weiner. And now we will go to Jim Meyer for your closing statement.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my introduction, my overriding concern is to bring balance to the City Council, both philosophically and in terms of background and experience. I think over the decades that I've lived in Columbia, I came here in 1977 as an elementary school student. We often had a lot more balance on our City Council, and I think different perspectives, different experience bases bring different tools to bear on problems, and we have a better problem-solving system when we have a wider segment of the population that's represented on the City Council. My core concerns are liberty, limited government, and the rule of law. And I think, protecting the rights of the citizens as the government goes about its business is very important and something that should be readdressed. And then I'd like to focus on what I consider to be the core functions of local government, which are providing public safety, both law enforcement and fire suppression, and also focusing on our common use infrastructure like roads and bridges. I think that's the bread and butter of what a city should do and provide, and I think we need to bring more focus to those issues. Thank you, and I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. And now we will go to Bill White-Camper for your closing statement.
I've lived in Columbia for 49 years, 26 years in the 6th Ward, 14 years in the 4th Ward, and 9 years in the 2nd Ward. In my opinion, the 2nd Ward is the most diverse of any of the wards, and I'm the most diverse of any of the candidates for the 2nd Ward. I love the city of Columbia, and if on April 6th you feel that I'm the best candidate, I would appreciate your vote. If you do not live in the 2nd Ward, I would appreciate it if you would ask a few 2nd Ward voters to vote for Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the candidates from the 2nd Ward and the 6th Ward for participating tonight. I hope that it was informative to the viewers and voters. This forum has been recorded and will be available from the Columbia Public Library in a few days. Thanks again to Lauren Williams from the library for managing this event. The League of Women Voters will also have a Zoom forum next Tuesday, March 23rd, featuring the candidates from the Columbia School Board, or for the Columbia School Board, and for the State Representative District 45. You can sign up on the Columbia Public Library for the Zoom link, and remind everyone to vote April 6th. Good night to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.